What if Austria-Hungary had won World War I? Imagine a world where the Austro-Hungarian Empire survived the storm of World War I, emerging victorious and altering the course of history. Would Europe look as divided as it does today? Would the horrors of World War II have been avoided altogether? And what worldwide consequences would ripple across continents, reshaping economies, cultures, and alliances? Today, we'll delve into this captivating alternate history, exploring what could have been in a world dominated by a victorious Austria-Hungary. To understand the implications of an Austro-Hungarian victory in World War I, we first need to grasp the empire's importance and fragility before the war. Austria-Hungary in the early 20th century was a sprawling empire of over 50 million people, encompassing modern-day Austria, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and parts of Poland, Ukraine, Romania, and the Balkans. It was a mesmerizing mosaic of languages, religions, and ethnicities, but also a house divided against itself. Ethnic tensions simmered between the empire's Slavic populations, such as Czechs and Serbs, and its dominant Austrian Germans and Hungarians. Nonetheless, it was a land of cultural brilliance, with Vienna as a global hub of art, science, and philosophy. But this fragile empire found itself at the heart of World War I due to a single event, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, in Sarajevo by a Serbian nationalist in 1914. The war that followed turned the empire's deep internal weaknesses into a fatal collapse. But what if history had taken a different path? Imagine if Austria-Hungary had triumphed alongside its Central Power allies, Germany and the Ottoman Empire. Let's consider how this alternate timeline might unfold. For Austria-Hungary to emerge victorious in World War I, several conditions would need to change. First, the empire's military would have to be more cohesive and better supplied, avoiding the humiliating defeats it suffered in key battles. Perhaps with a stronger alliance with Germany, or the early collapse of their adversaries in France and Russia, Austria-Hungary could secure favorable peace terms. Let's say the Central Powers win in 1917. The Treaty of Versailles, infamous for devastating Germany in our timeline, would instead be used to cement Austria-Hungary's influence. This treaty might grant the empire additional territories, consolidating its power over Central and Eastern Europe while weakening France, Britain, and Russia. In this alternate timeline, Europe in the 20th century would likely see Austria-Hungary emerge as a dominant Central European power. The empire might act as a counterbalance to Germany, preventing the kind of rivalry that fueled our timeline's Nazi rise. But the empire's survival would not be without challenges. Austria-Hungary's core issues, ethnic divisions, nationalist movements, and political dysfunction would persist. Could the empire evolve into a more decentralized federation, accommodating its many ethnic groups and stabilizing the region? Or would these tensions eventually explode into rebellion and civil war? Beyond internal struggles, Austria-Hungary's victory would also alter the fates of other major powers. The Russian Empire, already teetering in 1917 due to revolution, might face further destabilization. A Europe without the Cold War? It's a tantalizing prospect. How about Germany? A victorious Germany, paired with Austria-Hungary, might create a Central European bloc too powerful to ignore. Would this forged alliance deter future conflicts, or provoke greater militarization among rival states like Britain and France? Then there's the Balkans, a perennial hotspot for conflict. In our timeline, the collapse of Austria-Hungary unleashed a wave of nationalism, giving birth to new states like Yugoslavia. With the empire intact, would these nationalist movements ever realize their aspirations? Or would a victorious Austria-Hungary become an even harsher oppressor, sparking uprisings that destabilize the region for decades? Let's imagine Austria-Hungary's victory leads to relative stability. With Vienna as its pulsating heart, the empire could grow into a cultural and economic powerhouse. In our timeline, Vienna was already a hub of creativity, a city graced by figures such as Sigmund Freud, Gustav Klimt, and Ludwig Wittgenstein. Economically, Austria-Hungary's dominance would reshape trade and industry in Central Europe. Its position as a bridge between Western Europe and the East could allow it to thrive as a hub of commerce, innovation, and infrastructure. Could Vienna become an early model for globalization within Europe? It's an alluring possibility. At the same time, this centralized economic growth might create winners and losers within the empire. Regions like Hungary or modern-day Slovakia might flourish, but others, such as the empire's poorer territories in the Balkans, could feel marginalized, breeding resentment. One of the most profound implications of an Austro-Hungarian victory is its potential to prevent World War II. In our timeline, the Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany, sowing the seeds for Adolf Hitler's rise and the devastating global conflict to follow. But with a victorious Austria-Hungary providing a different balance of power, could those events have been avoided? Imagine Germany and Austria-Hungary forming a partnership, their economic and technological advances working in tandem rather than clashing as rival states. Without the crushing post-war conditions that fueled extremist ideologies, movements like Nazism or even fascism might struggle to take root. A Europe where stability supersedes fervent nationalism might emit echoes of cooperation far earlier than in our timeline. However, stability often comes at a price. A dominant Austria-Hungary might suppress smaller nations' independence movements, creating long, simmering resentment. It's possible that conflicts in Europe may shift from large-scale wars to endless insurrections against oppressive empires. Beyond Europe, the ripple effects of Austria-Hungary's victory would reshape the world. Let's begin with colonial empires. Britain and France, weakened by their defeat, might lose hold over their colonies sooner. The early 20th century saw movements for independence in places like India, Vietnam, and Africa. Another intriguing question lies in the United States' role on the international stage. In our timeline, America's global influence grew after entering World War I and expanded further following World War II. With Europe potentially stabilized by a victorious Austria-Hungary, the US might become a more isolationist power, focused inward rather than on the global stage. Lastly, consider the delayed or altered rise of the Soviet Union and communism. Without a weakened Russia succumbing to revolution, or without Stalin's eventual transformation of the USSR into a superpower, the Cold War might never materialize. A world without this ideological clash could produce an entirely different set of alliances and conflicts in the 20th and 21st centuries. All of this hinges on one major question: could Austria-Hungary, even in victory, survive as a cohesive empire? The internal divisions that plagued the Habsburg monarchy were deeply rooted. A victory in World War I might buy them time, but not necessarily a permanent solution. Success would likely depend on reform. Could Austria-Hungary evolve into a more inclusive federation, granting greater autonomy to its many ethnic groups? Or would it cling to outdated methods of governance, crushing dissent until rebellion becomes inevitable? If the empire had managed to maintain unity, it could serve as a fascinating counterexample to nationalism, a multicultural state thriving among more homogeneous nations. However, history rarely favors empires built on suppression. The seeds of rebellion often grow regardless of external victories. So, what does this alternate history teach us? A victorious Austria-Hungary could have reshaped Europe, prevented World War II, or even delayed the collapse of colonial rule. It might have seen Vienna rise as an unrivaled cultural and economic capital, or plunged Europe into longer internal conflicts fueled by unsolved ethnic tensions. This exploration of alternate history invites us to reflect on the fragility of empires, the consequences of nationalism, and the interconnectedness of historical events. While we may never know how this story would have unfolded, imagining it helps us understand the delicate balance that defines our shared history. As we ponder this fascinating what if, one thing becomes clear. The choices, alliances, and outcomes of the past leave an indelible mark on the present, reminding us of history's power to shape the world we live in today.